if you think about that as a business, either a current business owner that owns a fitness business or someone who wants to transition, your investment needs to be in yourself first. And be the best version of you can be. And then now you're equipped with the people mechanics that you need in order to facilitate the building of a badass team. You can't build or expect to have a badass team if you're not a badass leader.
Hey, what's up, everybody? And welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today we have a giant coming from you from the great state of California. I have Michelle Rainis. And who is Michelle Rainis, you might ask? Well, she is an author, speaker, facilitator, coach, and founder of MDR Coaching and Consulting Incorporated. She's also the creator of the unconventional leadership brand, Badass Leader, which I love. Michelle has a coveted reputation of exceeding expectations in a highly competitive, distressed, or volatile business climate. Her strengths encompass extensive people aptitudes in leading and developing large, diverse teams. She possesses over 34 years of intense hands-on leadership, mentorship, organizational, and operational expertise. She has an impressive resume of startups and turnaround successes and a flair for building cohesive, high-performance teams. Michelle is passionate about building badass leaders. And today we're going to talk about, she wrote a book called From Bad to Badass Leader. And what it is it's really kind of an autobiographical trip of her journey from being just a horrific leader to becoming a better leader, and that moment of humility where it was a turning point. And then she decided that she was going to become a better leader. So Michelle, welcome to the show. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, it sounds really good. It was lengthy, but great. No, it's so good to be here, Jim. Thanks for inviting me to share my bumps and bruises and grit and all that good stuff that on my journey from going from really sucking as a boss to figuring out how to lead. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share this with your listeners so that they can hopefully avoid the same pitfalls and boot in mouth moments that I experienced on my journey.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you coming on. I was really psyched when we had our initial phone call when I was talking to you. I mean, because I think your story is so relatable to most trainers, and we were talking before we started recording how this show is geared toward trainers who want to make that leap to business ownership, owning their own training studio or gym, or trainers who had already made that leap and now are figuring out, holy shit, I'm a really bad business person and I'm a horrible leader. Nobody wants to work for me. What do I do to turn this business around? So I think that really resonates. So that's why I was really excited to have you come on and share your story.
Well, I appreciate that. And, it's not just the fitness industry. I mean, it's every, I started my company. I left corporate America, just to give you a little backstory. I resigned from corporate America and, between the Christmas holidays in 2011. And I think it's important to share a little bit the why. Why did I walk out of corporate America? 34 years under my belt, a lot of bumps and bruises, a lot of great successes, a lot of podium finishes, if you will. And then I had arrived at what I would consider, and a lot of my peer groups considered, to be a really fantastic position of success. As a VP for a very large company on the West Coast, and had a rockin' team underneath me. I had a great portfolio of experience and expertise, and I was really, call it, at the top of my professional game. But I was also like 46, and my mom at 49 had a massive coronary in her sleep. And she was, by all intents and purposes, 5'8", 125 pounds, smoking hot, very active, busy. You'd never see it coming. No signs, no symptoms, just boom, sudden death. And so at 27, that's about the age when I was 27 when she passed. And, we never saw it coming. So I went in, had a big cardiovascular workup, and realized that I share some of the same problematic genetics that she had. So as 46 approached, I started looking at life very differently. The lens I looked through became, what if I only have 3 years? And I don't make it to retirement to, do my next or second career, right? So I really did take on the mindset of live with, like, if you're dying, but not in a morbid, sad kind of way, but more in a purposeful kind of way. Like, I really need to like suck it up and figure it out and do something really big right now. And so I decided to step away. I'd save some money. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start up. My dream is to help other leaders avoid the same mistakes that I made, which were painfully unnecessary. And the unfortunate thing is when they occurred for me, I was 26, 27, and I didn't have any resources that were relatable to me. I mean, there were a ton of leadership. I shouldn't say ton. There were leadership tools out there, the Ken Blanchards of the world, the Stephen Coveys. But here I am, young and edgy, and it just didn't resonate. I mean, I read them, they were helpful because they were what was available. And so anyway, I started my own company and decided to focus fully on helping leaders be successful at building their skill sets so that they can then build transformative teams. That's not when the Badass Leader brand was born. That came later. And so that was it. That's when I stepped away and decided I was going to start a company and just focus on leadership. And then been doing that for a number of years. And then last year, I had actually, it was December 2018, I purchased a weekend getaway to do a book, what do you call immersion process, where you just learn, how do you write a book? I had no idea how to write a book. And I stepped away from that and felt like the book I needed to write wasn't the book I went there that weekend to write. And I just said to my girlfriend, I need to write my story. I need to tell all the mistakes and bumps and bruises I made to try and help other leaders understand that this is human and hopefully this will help them avoid the same pitfalls. And so that's when the Badass Leader brand was born, and that was in 2019.
2019, just in time for the pandemic. All right. So
that's right.
So that's what I want. That's what I want to take the listeners through on this episode, is that journey from bad to badass. I really like that. And then within that, you came up with the 12 leadership lessons. And the thing that I like about the 12 leadership lessons, as well as the whole like branding that you've done, I love the branding, by the way.
Thank you.
And I think it resonates and it's very relatable. But the thing I like about your 12 leadership lessons is, like, number one is don't be an ass. And then another one is build a badass team. Don't be a kiss ass. Things like that. So it's real talk, right?
Yes.
And really relatable. It's what you would say in real life versus corporate speak, so to speak. So I really like that. So
thank you.
Tell us how you found out that you were a bad leader, and then take us on that journey to becoming a badass leader.
Yeah. So and first off, I'll say the leadership lessons, they're built in order. So it's kind of like if someone is, as you described, if your listener is thinking about transitioning and they're going to move into a role of leadership, or they're currently in a role and maybe struggling with the people parts, which tends to be the areas where most leaders struggle, then, what's the roadmap? How do we get there with the people parts? And so number one is, don't be an ass. And it sounds so simple, but if you're not aware of how you show up and how you're impacting your team, it's going to stunt your growth and your evolution as a business, and certainly as a business owner. And one thing that I did when I was moved from being a player into being a leader or a manager, I wasn't a leader yet, is I lacked self-awareness. So I had no idea, I just was a driver, very intense personality, focused on results, wanting to, bust my butt, bust everybody else's butt to get stuff done, put numbers on the board, make things happen. I was a hustle, and I created a lot of collateral damage and was oblivious to that fact. And my wake-up call came in the form of resignations, keys, and a walkout. And the mortifying part about the whole thing is I didn't see it coming, and it completely took me off my feet. and ultimately could have had me fired, should have had me fired. But fortunately at the time, the boss I was working for was really manned up and said, you know what, this is my failure. Here I took, this, top sales producer, put him into a management position, really didn't give him any support. So he took part of the blame, which was really great. And so he gave me another shot, which was incredible, because I don't know that I would have done the same considering how oblivious I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wake up call was in recognizing that I was the problem, and the common denominator wasn't my team, it was me. And that's a tough, piece of humble pie for a lot of people to choke down, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
starting point, right? We have to
Mm-hmm.
first recognize what's not working. And a lot of times what we like to focus on is what is, and what's not is what's really holding us back. And mine was definitely my people skills, and particularly my leadership skills. And this is where it gets tricky. If you think about a fitness trainer, right? One of the things that I've experienced being someone who's used trainers throughout many years of my life is that they have great rapport and relationship building skills. And they are great at building trust and creating great client experiences for me as their client. But when they transition, I should say, and when they transition into leadership, for some reason that doesn't translate to their peers, and it doesn't translate to their teams. And that's what happened with me. I was great with the customers. I could sell ice to Eskimos, right? That's why I earned the opportunity to be promoted. But
Mm-hmm.
when it came to leadership, I put on the wrong mindset that
Mm-hmm.
didn't serve my teams and my people. And it certainly didn't serve me as someone who needed to become a leader, right? So that's a sticking point. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, Jim.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think most people like you. I know, speaking for myself, I was a very successful trainer. I had a very loyal following for a long time. And I was a training geek. I was a great trainer, good at building and maintaining client relationships. But my whole attitude was just like yours. It's like, we're going to get to it. We're going to produce results. Failure is not an option. We're going to grind until we can't grind anymore. We're going to keep going, whatever it takes to get clients in the door, clients paying, all of that stuff. So that's how I was. And that's how I treated my team.
Mm-hmm.
When my team came to me and said, oh, well, I can't do that. I'm like, well, bullshit. You're just not doing a good enough job, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And then I took the attitude of, hey, this is my business. We're gonna run it the way I want it to be run, and it's my business, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. So either you learn how to run it the way that I want it run, or you can get the fuck out.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And the
Exactly.
problem is that too many people chose option B.
Yes. Yeah.
And then then, like you said, and then I didn't have any self-awareness, so I wasn't aware of how my actions and my attitude impacted my
Mhm.
team, how it impacted how they do their job. And then I also gave this air of my time is more important than yours, because I didn't take their time or their needs into consideration, just all those self-awareness stuff. So I can
Yes.
totally relate. And I think there's a lot of people like that. I, and then there's a lot of owners that will promote their head trainer
Hmm.
into like a sales or marketing or some other position. And just because they're a great trainer doesn't mean that means they have the skill set to be a great trainer, but they may not have the skill set to be great in that next job. And the same
Yes.
thing, going from a trainer to a business owner, you become a leader of your team, of your
Oh,
company,
yes.
right? And so that requires a different skill set. So that was the tipping point for you, or the turning point for you, was when you basically had a mutiny and your team was ready to
Yeah.
walk out, and
Yeah.
then you had no choice but to look at yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So so I can definitely relate to that, and I think a lot of listeners can too.
Yeah. No, I was definitely the last bee standing. And it was not a good place to be, but it was also something that I look back on. And, you, life's mistakes and what I call boot and mouth moments. And in this particular case, I refer to it as my hashtag bull ride. It was really the awakening for me to recognize it. If people are going to want to, come and bust their ass for me and make a difference for our brand, our customers, and deliver a brand promise and experience, then I've got to give them a reason to want to play on my team. And so that's where lesson 2 comes in, which is, what was the first thing I did after having my awakening was I needed to stop, drop, take a selfie. And so that involves really looking into the mirror, because at the end of the day, you are your results. Your team is your results. Your client experiences are your results. It's your business, it's your brand, and everything is a reflection of you. So what I've learned since then is that if I'm ever, anything that isn't working in my business, the first place I look is in the mirror and think about, how did I create that? What am I not noticing? What am I doing? And I solve that problem first before I start looking or pointing fingers at other people. Because at the end of the day, it's my brand, my business, and my team. And that is a very empowered place to be. And it enables me to figure out who I get to be as a leader for my people. And people are not alike. Everybody is different. And so we have to figure out what the recipe for success is. If you're my salesperson or my trainer on my team at my gym, I need to know what Jim needs from me as his leader in order to optimally bring him into his potential, right? His highest potential. And then there's Sarah, and she needs something different, right? Because you're not cut from the same cloth. You may have the same passion and work at the same place, but we're individuals here. And so understanding myself and my leadership competencies and gaps and what I need to do to self-develop is really, really important. So stop, drop, take a selfie is really the first step for leaders to figure out this whole people thing, right? Figure ourselves out first. And then that sets you up for lesson 3, which is let's talk about trust, baby. So, and that is critically important. If you just think about the client experience as a trainer, right? I was very loyal as a client. I wouldn't cheat on my trainer. I won't cheat on my hairdresser either. But trust is a critical foundation, right, for that. So as a leader, it's vital that your team trusts you. And so where I invested time and where I continue to learn how to invest time over my career was in making sure that my people feel safe and that they can tell me anything, right? I need to know the good, bad, and the ugly. I need to know where their fears are, their weaknesses, their gaps are, and who I get to be to help, meet their needs. And if I don't know that, if they're afraid of me, or if they're, living in an environment that is unhealthy, and not just, especially in the fitness business, it's almost hypocritical to not have a healthy environment, a healthy workplace environment when it comes to people health, mental, emotional well-being, as well as physical well-being. To me, those all go hand in hand. It's to me, something that would define the brand of this industry. And so trust is a critical foundation to enable you to do that as a leader. And so go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
well, I was going to say
so.
that, no, that's very good point, because if you are an ass, if you're always ranting and raving and going on tirades, they don't want to, if they feel like they made a mistake, they're not going to admit that to you.
Oh, no.
And so there's no trust there. And so then that becomes a sticking point, or what I call the kind of a smoldering infection in your business, that eventually just grows and manifests into something bigger down the road.
Yeah. And it starts to create that toxic culture where, people are water coolering, they're talking about the, problems in the business. And so their focus isn't on creating great client experiences. Their focus isn't on increasing sales. Their focus isn't on, representing your brand. Right? They're distracted, and it's unhealthy, and it's disengaging. And at the end of the day, it's the leader's report card. And so, inevitably as a leadership coach and developer, because I have MDR coaching and consulting is my, call it the mothership, and Badass Leader is a brand within the mothership. I've been working with leaders and teams ever since I started my business in January 2012, where I just focus on consulting and coaching. And inevitably, time and time again, when I'm contacted by executive teams that say, or business owners that say, hey, come in, I need you to come fix my people. And right. And the reality is it's 99.9% of the time, it's their mirror, right? It's them, they're the problem. And that's where I get to do the work first. And then once we solve for that, then great. How do I translate those skill sets down through the organization at the various levels of leadership? Right, to where we can increase the competencies of the whole team. But starting at the top, because that's where your multiplier is. So if you think about that as a business, either a current business owner that owns a fitness business or someone who wants to transition, your investment needs to be in yourself first, and be the best version of you can be. And then now you're equipped with the people mechanics that you need in order to facilitate the building of a badass team. You can't build or expect to have a badass team if you're not a badass leader.
Yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of that, like that, stop, drop, and take a selfie, where you're going back to step number 2, is tough work, because
Yes.
you're looking under the couch,
Yeah.
to see what's underneath there. You're looking under the rug. I mean, you're looking and you're cleaning out that closet that you've been stuffing stuff in for
Yeah.
years. I mean, it's tough work, but that's also where you start to build that skill set, because it takes a totally different skill set to become a badass leader. You have to take other people's consideration into account. Well, is this a position that this person's going to be happy in? Am I going to be happy with that person in that position? Do they have the skill set? What do they need to be successful? Things like that, versus, well, she's a great trainer, so she's going to be great on the sales team too. So I'm just going to throw her on the sales team and throw her there and expect her to just be a rock star without giving her any support or training or education or anything like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, it goes back to, we have to develop our competencies as a leader, and then we have to be aware of the competencies and personality differences of our team. And the thing about the Badass Leader brand that I'm really excited about is it's unconventional, right? I mean, it's not white collar, it's, day-to-day, everyday leaders. And I don't care if you're an entrepreneur or you're a large organization, it's just a palatable, approachable, edgy, fun way to embrace leadership. And I created this brand out of the feedback that I received traveling throughout the country and delivering for some very large organizations their content, their leadership content. And inevitably what I would find is that people would say, yeah, I get it. I need to improve my people skills, and I definitely have a problem. But, I fall asleep while I'm listening to this, and I'm just like, it's boring to me, and it doesn't feel like me. It feels like the process is painful. It's like I have to do it, but I don't want to do it. And so the Badass Leader brand is to help ignite that fire within the belly of saying, hey, I want to be a badass leader. It's fun, it's edgy, it's playful, it's colorful, it's unapologetic. It's not for everyone, but it does inspire leaders who, before they're actually writing me and saying, I feel like this is my brand. And so that's what I really want to do, is I want to serve the gap, because this is, I wouldn't say it's politically incorrect, but a lot of corporations will go, oh, well, that's too edgy. And, we're not dropping F-bombs, but we are definitely talking straight talk, right? And we're sugar-free, and it's fun, and it's intense, and it has rock and roll music. And I mean, it's very much like you go to the gym and have a great workout, and it has great music in the background.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. So let's talk about put your people first, number 4.
Lesson 4. Yeah. So lesson 4 is, okay, so now if we kind of think about stacking the lessons, right? You're not being an ass anymore. You understand your selfie. You're working on building trust with your team. And so now it's really important that you prioritize people over performance. And this was a big one for me. The reason why I inevitably showed up as an ass time and time again is because I was so hyper-focused on results, right? Putting numbers on the board, the scoreboard, instead of on the people who are putting the numbers on the board. And the multiplier is to flip it, is to really focus on making sure that you're prioritizing your people, you're taking care of them, you are really focused on creating a healthy workplace culture, and what I call musketeer mindset on the team, where we're all for one for all. We have each other's back, and we focus on the collective wins, right? And so when we do that and you prioritize people over performance, guess what happens to performance? It's a massive multiplier to outcomes. And intuitively, it was backwards for me. I was so focused on the results and the actions required to get the results that I actually blew people up and created unnecessary emotional wakes that were destructive and unhealthy. unhealthy for business, and certainly unhealthy for people. And so then once we prioritize people over performance, then lesson 5 is where I really want, if you thought the hard work was in lesson 2, lesson 5 is where you really pull up your sleeves and you go, okay, so what's going to be the game changer for me as a leader and a business owner that's going to really create a massive multiplier to outcomes? And that is becoming an epic coach. And so one of the things that if I had a do-over, that I would have done so much earlier, like one of my first leadership promotions, if I'd known better, I would have gone and actually gotten a formal coaching certification. To me, it's the best investment you can make as a leader of teams, and certainly as a business owner. And so invest in becoming, how do I coach? How do I give feedback? How do I engage with conflict? What if I have drama between the teams? How do I address that? And so those coaching skills are a game changer for outcomes and performance in your business and just overall business health. And so this is where you really focus on your coaching skills and building that competence within yourself. And then now that really tees you up for success for lesson 6, which is build that badass team. So it's build a badass team. So now you've got you're not being an ass, you understand yourself, you establish trust, you prioritize people over performance, you're developing your coaching skills. And then now it's like, okay, so how do I assemble? How do I identify? How do I onboard? How do I train? How do I give feedback? How do I develop my team to really make them a badass team, and a team of we, not a team of me? And so that's where those competencies come into play. And in the book, From Bad to Badass Leader, there are, roadmaps and suggestions, and we have toolboxes on the Badass Leader website to help you on your badass leader journey. So it's not like I'm just giving you advice and that you don't have any tools and resources. We have tons of tools and resources. And so then once you've hit lesson 6, right, and you're assembling your badass team, then that's what I call the tipping point, where it starts to get easy and fun. And so we're only halfway through, right? We still have to get through lesson 12. But the cool thing is once you have that badass team assembled, right? They trust one another, they're operating as musketeers, you've really created this great culture. Then lesson 7 is, okay, now we get to push the envelope and be like Gumby and stretch them. So lesson 7 is called Create the Struggle. So then now how do we stretch people outside of their job descriptions, beyond what they thought was possible for themselves as far as their own development potential? And so as leaders, we always want to be stretching and evolving, not only ourselves, but our teams, because that, growth and possibility for business and for people live outside the comfort zone, not inside the comfort zone. And if we've got that trust and we're not being an ass, right, then it actually is an accelerator to business outcomes and personal and professional confidence and competence and esteem. So lesson 7 is now you get to kind of have fun and really evolve your business and your individuals within your business. And that
So what would that look like? Like, give me an example of like creating a struggle for a team. Cause I really like that, encouraging your team to kind of stretch themselves and grow. But what would that look like?
That would be, I sit down in your personal development coaching sessions with them, instead of an annual review just based on performance metrics, it's really sitting down and talking about how can we develop their competencies beyond what they thought was possible. Some people might want to do public presentations. Others might want to take an epic coaching course. Other people might want to have a coach to help them improve their business competence or sales competence, right? Another thing that I love to do with creating the struggle is involve them in collaborative problem solving, change leadership, right? To make them a part of breaking it apart, solving the problem together, and then executing on that plan. So you're giving them the skill sets and the competencies that stimulate their intellect and grow their possibilities. And what does that enable you to do? It frees you up to grow and scale your business. And then they're now working collectively on running the business, and it gets their DNA into the business. Not only do you have their sweat equity, you get their intellectual equity. And so that's very stimulating and engaging for teams. They love it when their ideas get executed and implemented, right? So that's what creating the struggle is inviting them to the table and tapping into their what they thought wasn't possible, but you see as a great potential for them, and then teaching them to cross-pollinate. And leveraging your team to grow and scale and create, bring that brand promise to life beyond what you maybe even you thought was a possibility for your business.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's very, very helpful. All right. And then number 8 is
suck it up, buttercup. And that's just a reality. I mean, this year, COVID, year has been a perfect example of that. The suck will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when and what, right? And so as leaders, we have to be able to navigate first ourselves through. And then if we don't navigate, again, goes back to that selfie, right? You got to take care of your selfie, navigate yourself through the suck, figure out, get your right mindset, and solve for that. Don't, verbally vomit downward into your teams about your stresses and the drama and how you're feeling with respect to the suck, right? It's find mentors, leverage family, friends, people that are outside of your business or up within your organization, but not downward in your organization to navigate yourself. And then it's about how do we pull our teams through? Who do we get to be as a leader to help them trust that it's going to be okay, to, again, now that you've created the struggle, make them a part of the solution, right? To help you navigate through the suck. What ideas do they have? Let's tap into the intellectual property of the whole group, right? And because things will happen. I mean, I have had from, murders to suicides to massive disasters to the real estate market collapse. I mean, in my career and in my background, when I was doing real estate management for very high-end profile, massive properties, like 3,000 home sites, where you're living with your customers, right? Those types of things happen. And so
murders
will happen. Oh, yes. Yes. And so you learn, yeah. I mean, you learn, how do I navigate through this? We don't expect it. I've had arsons that I've dealt with, big drug rings, crime rings, rape investigations. There's a plethora of things that can occur. And so as leaders, we have to be proactively prepared for how are we going to navigate through it and how do we get our teams through it so that we don't all end up in the downward spiral. And so the one of the examples that I'll share is like when I was in real estate development and operational leadership in 2008. So we were filling up 3,000 homes in the midst of the 2008 rug being pulled out from underneath us. And so we had, all types of deals that were being broken, people that were committing suicide because of financial ruin. I mean, it was just like really, really tragic. And we were laying off hundreds of people. And it's just a really hard thing for a leader to go through. So we have to make sure we take care of ourselves. And that way we're able to take care and serve our people so that they can then take care of your clients. And it's much like what we're experiencing in 2020 is who do we get to be as a leader to suck it up? That doesn't mean not caring. It means caring and being there to serve your people and leveraging people to help serve you, but just not downward dumping onto your team that's going to create additional anxieties and fear, right? Figure out how do we serve our teams and how do we leverage the team to help us navigate through and navigate our customers through? How do we pivot, right? So that's what Suck It Up Buttercup is about being resourceful and really being empowered to tap into and leverage and navigate.
Yeah, I like that. And I like that about what you said about not vomiting downward your chain of command, because to me, somebody told me this analogy and it fits really well. It's like if my dad was taking me to school and say, hey son, by the way, I have this big account and if I don't land it, I'm probably going to lose my job. I don't know if we're going to be able to pay the mortgage. We might have to move and sell a car and sell some other things. Now you go have a good day at school.
Right.
It's the equivalent of saying that same thing to your trainers and then saying, okay, now you go out and give a great customer experience. For the rest of the day. Now you just can't, they're like, you know what I mean?
You just freak them out. Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to be trusting and you have to be honest, but you don't have to spill your greatest fears. Trusting from the standpoint of you want to be honest. If it's a shit show, it's a shit show. but then you leverage them to go, okay, let's make it better. We've got this. How do you rally the team through the struggle, right? So that's who we get to be as leaders, is to figure out how do we serve our teams so that we can, then serve our business and our customers, right?
Yeah.
And mitigate those challenges, right?
Yeah.
So that's the main focus on Suck It Up, Buttercup. And then lesson 9 is don't be a kiss ass. And that's a slippery slope. It's easy to fall into. And especially if you work within an organization or a member of an organization that's kind of been preconditioned, if you will. And so I'm a fan of what I call hashtag no lip gloss, right? So I'm not going to kiss ass, but there is an art to being respectfully sugar-free. And that's a competence that badass leaders need to focus on. How can I give feedback, whether it be up through the channel of the organization or across to my peers or business partners potentially, in a way that's authentic, it's honest, it's respectful, and that they know what the good, the bad, and the ugly is. And that's a skill set and a competence that is important for leaders and business owners to have, so that people need to know what's working and not working in the business. Your teams downward, you don't need to spill that onto them, but you do need to know how to communicate effectively when there are challenges. And don't tell people what they want to hear. You need to tell them what they need to hear.
I like that. And like all the other leadership lessons, it's much easier said than done.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a skill set that you're going to have to practice. And the first couple of times, you're probably going to suck at it. Yeah. But that's no reason to give up on it. You just got to stick with it.
Yeah, and the thing is too is, and that kind of leads into lesson 10, which is be a groupie, right? Don't be kiss ass, but be a groupie, because you want to praise progress. You want to recognize and praise your own progress. So it's just, if you said, hey, I'm going to work on these 12 leadership lessons, and you give up in lesson 2, then that's so unfortunate. What you need to say is, did I do better today than I did yesterday? Did I do better this week than I did the prior week? How about month over month? How about quarter over quarter? Praise progress within yourself and for your business, and then certainly for your team. So it's all about, being a groupie. So lesson 10 is focusing on, I use the explanation that, when I go to a concert, because I love rock music, I'm buying the t-shirt, I'll line up for the autographs, I'm screaming until I'm hoarse for 2 days afterward. The band can see, hear, and feel my absolute adoration of them. And they don't even know me. I don't know them either. But I work with people more than I spend time with my family. And they need to know that I'm a groupie for them. You need to sign up as a leader for their autographs. You need to wear their t-shirt. You need to sing their praises, and you need to do it often. And this isn't this touchy-feely stuff, right? This whole leadership program is really about who we get to be as leaders in order to facilitate healthy business growth and performance, serve up our brand promises, and create amazing kick-ass client experiences, and build a team that is fiercely committed to your brand. And so you have to be, as a leader, you've got to be a groupie for them. And so find the morsels and the opportunities where you can, rally the troops and cheer them on. And that doesn't mean there isn't space for giving corrective action or disciplinary feedback. That's all a part of the EPIC coaching segment in lesson 5. We have to be able to do the good, bad, and the ugly. It's all a part of these competencies that are critical for business health and performance, or business fitness, right? So, so being a groupie for your people is an absolute accelerator to business outcomes. And it has to be authentic, I'll add.
Yes, I like that. So, I mean, you're a cheerleader for your team.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think about the competencies within the trainers that I've worked with over the years as a client, right? So from the client experience, I feel like fitness trainers have these competencies. They do this stuff with their clients. So to me, there's a transferable skill set that's already ingrained in this industry. And so the key is to align the 12 lessons, work on yourself. You're already well ahead of many leaders, because this is what you do. You establish trust, you build rapport and relationships, you are coaches, right? And you've got your coaching certification in one particular industry. So augmenting that or adding something to it is going to be a great value add for you and for your business. And then you are groupies. I see, like, I've been to these boot camp classes and they are cheering me on and giving me, give me 10 more. You got this. Come on, girlfriend. So I believe the baseline competencies in this business are a perfect fit for these 12 leadership lessons. And this is just going to be the frosting on the cake to overlay some of the underlying competencies that are already there just by the nature of what you do every day.
Okay, I like that. It's kind of like systems. You already have a system for training a client, even though you haven't written it down because it's all here. You have that mental checklist that you go through. And it's,
Yes.
and it's the same thing with creating rapport and relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
And building that trust, right? And then you
Yeah.
prioritize clients. Well, now you're going to prioritize your team, right?
Yeah.
And so and then what are the competencies that you need to layer on to what you already have in order to take you to that badass level? And I know I didn't say this at the beginning. We talked a little bit about the team that I blew up, but these 12 lessons were born out of massive bumps and bruises and grit and mistakes. So this is not coming from a place of, high academia. I'm the professor. This is like through grit. These are all of my mistakes. This is everything that I did wrong. And then when I finally figured out through doing it the wrong way, what the right way was, and getting tough feedback, and also leveraging mentors and business coaches myself, this is what over time, when I looked back, when I finally arrived, when I said I was finally at the point where I felt like, oh my God, I finally got this leadership thing figured out. I looked back and said, so what was that recipe for success? What were the mechanics that I did? And in what order did I do them in that I could help build a roadmap for somebody else and say, here's your pathway. This is what will get you there. And if you do these 12 things, then you will be a badass leader and you will build a badass team and a badass business. And so the next lesson is something that I was a very late bloomer on that would have served me a hell of a lot earlier if I had learned lesson 11, which is expand your tribe. And that is tap into, mentors, hire a coach, invest in a business coach, or like we have badass leader coaches, but or just a friend someone that you admire that is like getting it done, that you can say, hey, can I buy you dinner once a month or once every other week so that we could go out? I'd love to tap into what you have and I'll share whatever I have. Let's cross-pollinate, right? Let's share successes. Let's share those bumps and bruises. Let's help one another and strengthen one another. That tribal expansion is a game changer when it comes to, it's exactly what you're doing through your podcast. We're sharing stories and sharing ideas that help others win. And so that as much as we can do that as possible, as early as possible, is vitally important to setting us up for success and hopefully learning from other people's mistakes and leveraging other people's recipes for success. And then last but not least is lesson 12, which is love somebody like you. And that lesson, and again, this book is an autobiography, so this is my journey. And lesson 12, I still struggle with, right? I still struggle with self-care. I'm an admitted entrepreneurial-aholic. I love to work, and I love creating impacts for leaders and teams, and travel and variety and change and challenge, and all of those adjectives excite me. And so what that does is it has gotten in my way with respect to self-care. And because I go, well, as soon as I have time, then I'll go for a run, right? And so one of the reasons why I have trainers, because a trainer will help me, because I'll stay committed to the trainer because in my mind, they're a client, right? So I've booked the appointment, I'll commit to the trainer, but I'll break it up with myself, right? If it's just me. So love somebody like you is just, if we haven't taken care of ourselves, we're not going to be as powerful as we can be for our teams. And so I have gotten, and in this particular lesson 12, this is a hand-me-down gift from my ex-husband who lost his battle with cancer. And in his final stages, what he called his death row experience, is he realized that he was accomplishing life and not enjoying the journey and and that what became very evident to him is in the end, that there were three things that really stood out as most critically important. and that if he had a do-over, he would do it differently. And the lesson he learned and shared with me that I share in the book is that the most important thing you have is your health. And without it, there's nothing more important. And he had, tons of, custom vehicles and multifamily housing. I mean, he was very well established, but he would have traded everything for health. And then he wanted his health because number two was he wanted time, time for number three, which is to spend more time with the people he loved and cared about. So his entire value and priority system flipped when he saw that there was, a period put at the end of his life, right? And that it was ever present and approaching. So that was his gift to me. And I've made great progress as far as I am doing much better I play very hard now. I used to just work hard. I prioritize family and friends and having a good time and enjoying a great bottle of wine and cooking with my husband and adventures and being spontaneous. And yep, I'm still a workaholic, but I'm also a playaholic and a familyaholic. The part of I still have an opportunity on is that I need to do more exercise consistently. I'm kind of a 1 to 3 day a week gal when I need to be a 3 to 5 day a week gal. And so I put this in lesson 12, but I really challenge you as a fitness industry business owner to make it your lesson 1, because that's going to accelerate everything. I just couldn't make it lesson 1 in my book because that would be dishonest, because it's not where I'm at. It's something I'm still striving to improve. And so authentically for me, it lives in lesson 12, but I invite you to move it up, in your lesson stack as high as you can or as forward back as you can to lesson 1, because it will serve you and everyone around you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Michelle. I agree with you on lesson 12. I think that's so important. I talk a lot about that with my friends and on this podcast, because I really do think that it is really important.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that, and you going sharing your journey with us in these 12 leadership lessons that I think every listener of this show, myself included, can benefit from. So we always wrap up with 3 questions, and it's my favorite part of each episode because I think we get the best answers. Although you gave some big chunks of gold here out on this podcast. And my first question is, usually, what has been your most successful failure? And by that, I mean, at the time, it seemed like a devastating loss that you weren't going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take life lessons from that propelled you to greater success down the road. I think we know what that one is, right?
Yes, my bull ride.
Exactly. So I'm going to switch the question to, when you talk to leaders through your consulting company or at your seminars, when you had seminars and when you were able to have seminars again.
I'm having them virtually.
Okay, virtually. So what is, if you could put your finger on the biggest roadblock for most people in becoming a badass leader, what would it be?
I would say that they're successful in spite of themselves. And so they are unwilling to look in the mirror. They think, well, gosh, I mean, we're killing it. Look at our numbers. We're outperforming all of our competitors. But the reality is, after I've had an opportunity to sit with them and also walk through their organizations, it's palpable when there's an unhealthy leader at the top and they're still killing it on the balance sheet, then that's a blind spot, and that's a dangerous place to be. And so I'm always really excited because I have a very sugar-free style. I'm not a kiss ass as a coach. And so I don't have any issues sharing, my feedback with a business owner and a leader about what could be possible for your business. If you expanded your self-awareness, if this is where you're at now, imagine where you could be, if you really were a badass leader and you really understood yourself, recognize that things that you're doing that are destructive. And what's interesting for me is and I love to work with really challenging personality types that are, egotistical and very what I call D drivers. And But when they recognize that what they're doing is actually stunting their growth or holding them back, even though they've been successful in spite of themselves, they're really quick to roll up their sleeves and kind of go to what I call badass leader boot camp and make a change. And when they do, the ripple effect is astounding and super exciting. And then it just multiplies from there. And the cool thing about my business is it's all word of mouth. I mean, yes, I have a really bitchin' brand and it's a lot of fun. My brand is new. I just wrote my book. It just launched the end of 2019. And I'm just now really presenting the brand to the public since March or May of this year. But it's really taking off, and it's so much fun when I can have the opportunity to work with leaders and teams, and then they start to get traction beyond what they thought was possible just by getting out of their own way, right? And starting to recognize that what they're doing isn't working as well as it can if they were willing to look in the mirror.
Yeah, I like that. And that makes a lot of sense because sometimes success can be the biggest enemy to continued success.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially when they're successful in spite of that, and then they're blind to it.
Yeah.
But everybody knows that there's a problem, but nobody's saying anything because, again, they don't have that foundation of trust. And so there's fear within the organization. And so that can be a very, tricky place to be as a leader and as a business.
Yeah, I agree. Good point. My next question is, since you've launched this brand, which I'm a big fan of, by the way, and I think I've said that several times, but what has been the biggest surprise that you've had to deal with that you didn't see coming?
Well, 2020, obviously. And here's the lesson for me. So the other part, your first question, what was the biggest mistake? The biggest mistake for 2020 would have been, I was a 4 to 6 flight a week gal, traveling all throughout the country and in Canada, delivering leadership training through my MDR brand before I launched Badass Leader. And then 2020 hit, right? And I didn't have a virtual foothold like a lot of businesses. And so shifting and pivoting my business and having to convert what I had in person, call it in-person trainings, right? To virtual trainings and platforms, and changing and shifting all of my content. That was a very, that was a pretty tough kick in the teeth, but my mindset was very quick to shift. I mean, I realized immediately that I needed to do something different, kind of like when my team said, "You're out of here." And I looked in the mirror and realized I was the common denominator. It's the same thing for 2020. I looked in the mirror and said, "Oh shoot, I didn't diversify enough." I was resistant to the virtual application because I really enjoy the energy of in person. And so then I found myself, pivoting. So now since then I've launched a complete virtual platform. I do Badass Leader coaching virtually. I do trainings online virtually. So I really feel that I'll look back from starting in 2021. I'm already going to look back. I already have contracts lined out for the Badass Leader brand throughout 2021. And it's really taking off. And now I have multiple platforms on which I can touch clients and make a difference. And so I have in-person capabilities. As soon as I can hop on flights, I'm on flights again. I have virtual keynotes, in-person keynotes, workshops, boot camps, coaching. So now my menu of services is so much greater. And so the actual suck is going to end up being the greatest gift that I ever received as a business owner, because now I'm going to have all these different avenues on which I can create an impact for leaders and teams. And that's super exciting for me, even though, you kind of got to drudge through the learning, the lessons learned. It's been a transformative and exciting and stressful year, but I sucked it up, buttercup, and I got out there, and the struggle was created for me. And then I just shifted into higher gear and locked in the hubs and said, okay, what do I need to do to power through this and really come out of it stronger because of it?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, because there's two choices. You can kind of do something about it, or you can kind of become a victim and sit back and pout. And I have a pretty good idea which path you chose. And then my final question for you is, where do you go? And especially considering these 12 leadership lessons, right?
Yeah.
Because like, especially number 2, stop, drop, and take a selfie. So where do you go for your personal and professional development?
Me personally, I leverage my MDR. Well, I would say the listener can go to Badass Leader and go to the toolbox page.
Mhm.
And don't let me forget, Jim, to give you the special podcast page that I'm setting up for your listeners so that they can get some goodies and all that good stuff too for
Okay.
free.
Awesome.
But for me, I'm constantly sharpening the saw, right? And so I'm in the midst of, I just took another class through my MDR brand, which is for everything DISC. So emotional intelligence is really important for leaders. So I'm studying and I'm certified in emotional intelligence, but that doesn't mean I stopped learning there. So I take emotional intelligence training. I'm always taking leadership development training. I'm launching my own leadership academy. I have MDR Leadership Academy that will be launching around Black Friday. That's the goal, as well as Badass Leader Academy will be launching both virtual academies. And so I've taken a ton of all the classes that I'm putting on there. I've been taking those classes, writing content, so it requires a lot of research. I'm a constant learner. And as a business owner, that's important. We need to invest in our intellectual property and constantly be thinking about what else should I be doing. And that was, in as much as I was doing that for my in-person classes prior to 2020, I wasn't doing it for my virtual platform. So now I have a lot of different things that I'm constantly working on. So learning virtual competencies was my undertaking for early of 2021. So now I've got that competency to the point that I've built an online learning academy. So it's like, that's the evolution of leadership, right? Is that we just constantly can stay in the state of anticipation and what else should I be doing and thinking about. And that's the beauty of having teams, right? Because you can tap into those questions with them. What should we be thinking about? What ideas do you have? What should we be doing differently? What should we be getting rid of? How do we evolve our business? And then it's nice when you have a team that you build around you, because that's where you can create the struggle and tap into their ideas and expertise to have them help move the business forward and help you remain relevant and equipped to evolve and anticipate those pitfalls, because they will happen. Most definitely. That's a guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one, like you said, the suck is always going to be there.
It will.
Yeah,
And sometimes you see it coming and sometimes you don't. So,
right.
but you should always anticipate how you respond to it.
Yeah, I like that.
So.
Well, Michelle, this has been great. Thanks again for taking the time. I was real excited for this podcast, and you did not disappoint one
Oh,
bit.
thank you. Well,
I'm a big fan. I'm a groupie of yours now.
I love it.
So tell the listeners, where can they go to get more information, learn more? You mentioned the special link for the podcast
Yes.
listeners, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So the website is badassleader.com, and /fitness business will get them to the special podcast page where they'll get some gifts and goodies. And then that's on my website, but it's a link that's created for your listeners. So it's badassleader.com /fitness business. And then on there, they'll see, I would invite them to definitely spend some time on the toolbox page. And if they want to be groupies for us, check out our swag. We've got some really cool swag if they want to start representing. We have the book on Amazon, so it's live on Amazon. I'll make sure you have all the links so those can get it. We have it in audio, we have it on Kindle, and we have it in paperback. But here's my advice. The paperback version has the built-in workbooks that you can write in. So your book isn't just a reader's journey. You can actually use it as a workbook. So I'm a huge fan of the paperback. If you choose to go Kindle because you really like the portability of a Kindle, then on the podcast page, I'll give you the workbook for free. So as far as the fill in the blanks, right? You have to read the lesson, then fill in the blanks. So that'll be on there. And, but that's where they can get all the information, and certainly give us a ring if we can be of any assistance. We love kicking ass with and for our clients. And I look forward to following up with you at some date in the future to see how we can be of greater service to your audience, and really appreciate the opportunity to share my story and this unconventional badass leader brand.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And all those links will be in the show notes. Just go to trainerjim.net, click on this episode of the podcast, and all the links will be right there. And Michelle, I would love to reserve the right to have you back on, because you're a rock star.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you killed it. You killed
I'll
it.
come back anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot, and have enjoy the rest of your day.
I will. You as well, Jim. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Ciao.